What's going on, everybody? My name is Byron, and you are watching the Tell the Story Doc podcast on All of Life TV. Look, it's been great. We already have a month in the bag where we've gotten some great interviews from friends, from people who I love and respect. Today, we are continuing on that path because this brother right here, let me tell y'all, like it's a lot of cats that y'all might hear their names or see their articles and all that stuff. And then there's some guys, honestly, in my life that have spoken words that I may not even have shared, but it's been formative to the way I do ministry, the way I look at people, and this brother is one of them. Man, today I get to interview my brother, R.Derrick Parks. Yeah, man. Hey, bro, I was about to call your first name out, but I'm like, I don't know if people call you by your first name.
Listen, that's what my mama named me.
Yeah.
Even though she don't call me that.
No, you're doing the old school black church thing where nobody talks, like nobody says their first name. Like my granddad was H.R. Cogdale. It wasn't until I was like 14 that I realized his name was Herman. I was like, I thought his name was H.R.
Listen, that's what the R.Derrick is all about, man.
I dig it, bro. No, all right. We got a lot to talk about. But I gotta knock out two things first. One, I don't think people know, or most people probably don't know unless they know you, that you're a twin.
I'm an identical twin.
That's crazy.
Identical twin brother. Names are even identical.
Yeah.
You mentioned my first name, Rasheen Derrick Parks. And my twin is Raheem Eric Parks.
See, I didn't know that the middle names rhyme too.
It's all matching up like that, bro.
No, that's fire. That's fire. Do y'all have like that twin intuition thing? Like when something's going on, do you feel it?
Absolutely. All the time. You know, back in the day, my brother would be wilding out a little bit. And I never wild out because, but when he would be wilding out, man, I would get a sense like, something's not right. Something's not right.
Yeah. Nah, I dig that. I got another friend. I'll probably interview him sometime next year, but he's here in Daytona and he's a twin as well. And he and his twin are like they're totally different. They live two completely different lives, but they're identical twins and they have that connection. And man, that's amazing. Man, the second thing is I got to give you a shout out. I talk about you a lot more than you probably know, and I should reach out to you a lot more, and we'll talk about that in a second. But man, one of the biggest things that ever happened to me was the first year I went on the Breathe retreat, and we got to connect, and I feel like we became friends and brothers during that time. And I think during the midst of our conversation, I said something like, "Man, I don't even have enough money to get no J's. Like, y'all be wearing J's in the pulpit." And then you was like, "Send me your address." And man, I was sitting here like, dog, this dude really about to send me some J's. And he sent me some J's and some Chelsea boots, man. So salute to you. Cause I got a little bit more money now. So I got a couple pair. But that's because I'm tri-vocational or quadro-vocational, whatever. But man, I always think about that. You said what?
The whole podcast episode.
Oh yeah, we gotta talk about that too. But man, I shared that one. I get a lot of laughs from that. But the big thing is, I remember talking to my wife about, like, I was like, "Dog, he don't even know me like that." You know what I'm saying? Like, you knew of me, but you didn't really know me. And yet, I feel like from the moment we met, you were kind of like, "Yo, this is my bro. Like, I'm gonna show love. I'm gonna take care of him, whatever." And that was one of the signs, one of the many signs of, man, just your care for not just me, but for other brothers. And if I had to like really define who you are in my life and how I think of you, it's like, bro, you're like the pastor to the pastors. Like, you're one of the most caring guys that I've met in this whole group of guys. So I want to give you that shout out. We'll probably talk more a little bit about that in a few. But I want to give you an opportunity to just kind of share your story, man. Let people know who Parks is, how you got to where you got to, a little bit more about that story. I like when you talked about that was before we was on camera. So you can talk about that stuff. But man, tell the people a little bit about your story.
Yeah, man. First, I appreciate your words, bro. Honestly, um, I'm a pastor, and so I just love people. And you find so many dudes trying to get into this work, and they don't have a heart for people. And if you don't have that heart for people, it's not gonna aid you in the long term when you've just preached a sermon that was kind of eh, and the service was eh. Loving on people and people loving you back, that's what's going to carry you all the way through the difficulty of ministry, because ministry is hard, man. But with that, man, I spent my formative years in and around the Camden area in Camden, New Jersey. Was born there, and my whole family is from that area. And Camden had for a lot of years a notorious reputation for being a rough place to live, and still is in many ways. Um, one of the neighborhoods, one of the houses that we used to live in, um, is just gone. The whole thing is destroyed, and so this gives you a picture of what it was like there. But I grew up. I was raised by my aunt, my mom's my mom's oldest sister, and when I tell you, like, my auntie, I talk about her all the time. Everybody in my church knows my auntie, even though they've never met her, because I talk about her all the time. But my auntie, man, she got saved when she was 15 years old, and she has been in the same church. I want you to hear what I'm saying. She's been in the same church over 50 years,
Man, that's crazy.
like the same church, never left.
Yeah.
And so she raised us in church. Like, I come up church all day long on Sunday, everything in that nature. Like, that's how we live. Um, but as I was coming up as a young boy in church, man, one of the things that was real in my heart was like I started to have a love for Jesus that I didn't necessarily know that I had. I was just trying to do the stuff that everybody was doing. Um, but when I was in like fourth or fifth grade or something like that, I wrote a paper about what I wanted to be when I grew up, and my aunt showed it to me like 2 years ago, and I said I wanted to be a pastor.
Mm.
Now, how my life went,
It's different.
you wouldn't have thought that. It was different. But I came up and I was a teen dad, and really came to faith. Um, I decided, man, I'm gonna go to Christian university
Hmm.
because I'm gonna learn the Bible. And my godmother, she went to this local joint out here in the Pennsylvania area, and she sent me there. And I did this 1 year Bible enrichment program, and that's where I ran into church planting.
Hmm.
Didn't know it, um, but there was this cat who was coming to start a church in Philadelphia, and his name was Eric Mason.
Yeah.
And so we met with Eric Mason and in a coffee shop of the Christian college that I was going to. And he was telling us, yeah, we're starting this church, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, I guess that's something we should be a part of, because it's nothing like that for us.
Yeah.
And so that's when we got connected to that, and just spent a couple years traveling and trying to figure out my own life. And I was a dad and trying to raise my son, but then got connected deeply with the local church.
Mm.
And so as a result of that, one of the things that I think about, like coming up in this result of that, one of the things that I think about is largely white evangelical education, but never having any connection from the church with white evangelicalism it sort of shaped me in a different way. So, I was getting educated, right? And I was learning stuff, but my spiritual formation was all through the black church.
Yeah.
And so, like I think about how I even pastor now and how I lead now, like I almost get frustrated with like the critical nature of of white evangelicalism in a sense.
Hmm.
Like everything is you criticize everything. Everything is this. And I'm like, man, can't we just love people? Can't we just try to like figure out how to lead people and guide them? Their lives are a mess.
Right.
Like mine is too. But like, just trying to learn how to love and lead. Um, and that has been birthed to me out of, I spent all my time in the black church.
So wait. Let me stop you because you hit a lot of points, right? So like one thing I want to push on, right? Or not push on,
Yeah.
but touch on at least. Um, I don't think many people know what it's like to be a, a single father, right? Just,
Mhm.
but I also don't think people know how difficult it is to be a single teen father. And in the
Yep.
midst of all of that, you could
Yep.
still see the Lord clear enough to say, this is the direction that I believe God is pulling me on,
Yep.
putting me on. Is
Yep.
am I getting that right?
And you know, people don't understand the difficulty. It's really difficult, um, and especially coming from environments that were more impoverished, and to have these goals and these dreams that are like, I'm gonna make something out of myself. My son's gonna be able to look up to me,
Mm,
like, and I was just so determined to have my son be proud of who I was
wow.
as a man that drove me. I mean, and you know, for many years, like, with the help of my family, like I was raising my son. I got married when my son was about 6 or 7 years old, and then my wife and I we raised him together. Um, and then you throw into that all the complexities of a blended family, right?
Hmm.
Which is something that my wife and I like love to talk about,
Yeah.
and
Well,
we even think about doing that more formally.
oh, that would be dope. Hey, I love it. Hey, I love to talk about it too. Before we move there, though, you said
Right.
something else in that story. So, like you, young single dad, pursuing education, and you
Right.
run into this cat who's like, yo, we're planting a church and we're doing it
Yeah.
differently than what y'all have probably seen or been
Mhm.
privy to, or it's not your grandma's church, it's not your auntie's church, right? Um, and you have the privilege of saying something that a lot of people can't say, which is like, man, I've been there since day one. Like I've seen this come about from day one. What was it like to see a young Eric Mason move into Philly? He's not from there, but he has enough knowledge of the culture that he can
Mhm.
kind of, connect with the guys that are there. What was that like?
Yeah. Man, what's interesting? I think, and this speaks into a lot of what I see in church planting culture today. Pastor E did his homework, right? He took time to really try to figure out what the culture was and figure out who the people were and try to figure out how this was all going to work. Um, I see church planters today. They come in and they, throw that this phrase. I hate this phrase. There's no gospel church in our
Come
neighborhood.
on, man. I'm like, nah, there's one right there. There's one right there.
Right. Pastor Bullock, he been over here for like 25 years doing this thing. Like,
Right.
so, you know, that's just to seeing him like come up and just step into an area with a strong vision. Right. That's the thing. It was a strong vision that was compelling enough for us. I mean, young 20-something-year-old in in Philly and Jersey area to attach themselves to it, man. Like it's just a different kind of it was a different kind of vision. And so um, coming up as a single dad, man, like I sat in that meeting with Eric Mason after having gotten off of my night job, my overnight job,
Mm,
to go to class all day. And then there was a little break that they had to try to figure out how to coordinate to get us all to meet because I had to leave and go get my son and then go to sleep so I can go to work again.
right.
And so, all the complexities of that, but seeing how a passion and a vision for the city, like that, that influenced impacted me in ways that I didn't know back then,
Mm,
as I'm now leading in my city and what we can go with.
yeah.
So, yeah,
That's what's dope about that is, man, the dots are starting to connect for me because when I see you, your leadership, the way you do things, I'm like, man, look, he had a foundation in a strong black church. So you were exposed to that early, right? You had
yep,
that foundation. And even though there are some complexities in your life as you're growing, you still had that
yep,
foundation. And then you
yep,
get Eric Mason, you're introduced to Eric Mason, and
mm-hmm,
he's like working off of that foundation basically. And he's
mm-hmm,
kind of creating an opportunity for you to grow and build based off of what the Lord had already done in forming you
yep.
out. So like, um, yeah, I feel like I interrupted you in that story, but like how you meet Eric Mason, Epiphany gets started, and you make a few stops, but you're still kind of connected, right?
Right. Yeah. Yep. Made a few stops, honestly, just through some relational disconnection. Um, that was part of my own walling out and mentality at the time. Did some shifting around in my life, and the Lord, in His graciousness, snatched me back up.
Mm.
You know, I met it along the way. I met another cat named Doug Logan, um, who we had spent a bunch of time around Christian hip hop artists and all that kind of stuff like that, because that's what Philly was
Mm-hmm.
in them early days, man. If you were in Philly, you were gonna catch some Christian hip hop artists. And so I was spending some time with a few of them, and we have went to record some stuff, and it was at this dude's house, and his name was Doug Logan. And he opened the door, and these big Katie Corsos came at the door, and I'm like, "Yo, get your dogs, man."
Bro, I thought he was DMX or something.
Listen, he thought he was that. So we get over there, and we're recording in the basement, and this is sort of in the intermediate period for me. I'm just like kind of coming back and figuring out like what my faith in Jesus is and how I want to live out this, the Christian life and my life in ministry, and my life as a father and all that kind of stuff like that. And he says to me, he's like, "You're from Camden." And I'm like, "Yeah, man. I grew up there. Like, my whole family's from there. Like, I went to church there. Like, I came up in and around that area." And so he's like, "So then you know such and such?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I know such and such." He's like, "Well, do you know this one?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I know them too." And he's like, "Well, how you end up over here?" And I'm like, "Man, what you mean?" He's like, "How you end up over here at this school? You a Pentecostal boy. Like, you come up in these circles." And I started sharing my story with him, and he gave me probably the greatest encouragement of my life. Um, when he said to me, because all the trials I had gone through at that period, I was really just digging into just my own pride and my own sinfulness. He said to me, he said, "Man, thank God that you still believe, because I've seen so many brothers come up like you, deeply influenced, and then have to shift to a totally different culture and to have to try to reconcile your faith, like the faith of your birth, like what you were birthed into,
Yeah.
get into this deeply evangelical sort of reform culture that tells you that everything that you believed growing up was wrong and bad." He said, "So many dudes can't reconcile that."
Mm.
but you've been able to reconcile that and are still figuring it out, but you've held on to your faith. Most of the guys that I know who went through that don't believe in Jesus no more.
Wow. That's big.
Bro, it was major for me.
Wow.
Major for me. He probably don't remember that. But like it was the best moment of advice for me and encouragement for me that man, like God has his hand on me.
Mm,
I'm still here.
yeah.
I'm still fighting through this. I'm young and I got simple ways and all this stuff, but God's hand is still on me.
Yeah. You know what's powerful about that? And you know this because you are discipling men and leading men well,
Yeah,
is I mean, we've heard Doug Logan talk about it, Eric Mason talk about it, Carl Ellis talk about it.
right.
All of like the OGs talk about it, is speaking life into men and affirming their dignity and identity and worth. And that's
Yeah,
what he did at that moment. He's like, man,
yeah,
you are worth something, right?
yeah,
And and the evidence that you are worth something is that God gifts you faith that you might
yeah,
still believe in what God is doing in your life. Like
yeah,
that is such a powerful message.
yeah.
And I'm sure that even if he doesn't remember that, that sounds like a catalyst, like one of those rock moments in your life that you'll never let go of.
Bro, it's such a major moment for me in my life. I got interviewed for this book, Hero Maker, a couple years ago. The Exponential put out, Dave Ferguson and Warren Bird. And section of the book that I'm quoted in is about permission giving,
Hmm.
and that's the most pivotal thing that I got and received from Eric Mason and Doug Logan was that those dudes just gave me permission to just be. Um, they knew, like, man, like we see something in you, like we see God's hand on you. You're young, you know, you're going through that, but like they just gave me permission to be, man, and that was the most that's the most beautiful thing that I received from being connected to them and being in life with them together, man, is that they just gave me permission to just be. And so learning, man, how to navigate through like life as a young black Christian who who whose life was not sanitized. Like my life's not sanitized at all. Like I got two kids, marriage. Like my life is not like this pristine sort of model for the Christian minister and all that. It's just not. But to still like have the hand of God and have the grace of God around you, that's being affirmed by other leaders, Christian leaders,
Yeah.
man. Like who have levels of influence and have levels of authority in different places, man. Like that's just super affirming for, you know, what I mean, a young Christian black brother who's trying to figure it out and do like the ministry, man. So
I love all that, bro. Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna spend a whole lot of time on it because I think, me and Charlie kind of talked about it. And then I mean, I have some other guys I'm gonna talk to in the future about that moment where all of y'all were just kind of there, and you had these guys pouring into y'all. And it seems like it was extremely encouraging for y'all to have men like that pouring into you, affirming you, building you up, letting you know, no, God can use you and is using you, and there's no reason for him not to use you, right?
right,
um
right.
and he's doing that, or they're doing that for multiple guys at one time. And what it did for people from afar was it encouraged other people from other places. Like, I didn't know your story, but I'm looking at guys that look like me. Because for me,
Mhm.
um, I thought to be a pastor, you had to have the look, you had to have the diction, the way of speaking. You either had to be super charismatic or you had to be super reformed. And y'all was like, nah, we
Nah,
just us. We just us. And I was like, oh, you could do that? Oh, I
yeah,
didn't know that. Like I didn't know you could just be you.
yeah,
So fast tracking a little bit, how did you get to actually doing pastoral ministry, whether it be for Epiphany or Epiphany Camden, or how did that come about?
yeah. So how that came about for me was, you know, um, after I got married, we were in New Jersey, and the trek to Philly back and forth was a little rough. So I decided I was going to just try to do some ministry local and in Jersey and stuff like that. And so I wound up in my uncle's church, and was serving there with him. He actually ordained me, and so I was serving with him for a while, and things were good. Ministry was good, and as it goes, just like some differences in philosophy and ministry, caused us to go separate ways. Um, but when that happened, my wife and I were sort of searching around for a bit, trying to find a church. Um, and then we, I saw a post actually that Trevor put up, um, about Epiphany Camden having one of their early sort of pre-launch day things. And so I was like, oh snap, I forgot that was going on. Let's just slide over there. Like, I know Pastor Doug, I know Trev, like, I know all those guys. Like, we can just go be there. And day one, we walked in the door, and my wife and I were like, bet, let's go. And we just started serving and doing ministry over there, um, and helping that church plant get off the ground. And so, what was interesting about that was, I had, couple of years of being ordained in ministry. I had a couple of years already like preaching and experience and all that kind of stuff. And I'm saying I ended up staying at the school for seminary, got my master's and everything like that. And you know, I was according to how how today, like, you know, dudes, they graduate from seminary and they're instantly the lead pastor of a church.
Yeah,
Like, if they do that. You
if
see
they
what I'm
do that.
saying? Like,
Yeah.
if they do that. So, for me, I knew that I wanted to serve in the city that I was raised, and because I loved Camden, and to have an opportunity to do that, man, I would do anything. And so, I think Pastor Doug, he was wise, like, in the sense of like really seeing where I was. He said, "Hey, we got this set up and tear down situation. Can you take down these wires from the soundboard to the front of the
That humbled you.
movie?"
Dog.
And so, but listen, I was so eager and so grateful to have me in my city that I was like, yeah, take these wires. So me and my son every week, man, we take them wires down from front to back, and we did it with joy and grace, like. Uh, Low key, after a while, it turned into my son doing it because he was lower to the ground than me. But I was modeling service for him, is what
Right.
it was. And so, and from that led into, okay, D, you got some passion for the youth. Like, we need to set up a children's ministry. We need to help us set that up. Okay, boom, I did that. All right, we need to set up our small group situation. Like, you help us with that. I did that. All right, now we need to get this community life really fortified and rolling. Like, can you help us with that? Did that. Um, and so, that's sort of, I just got my start, man. Where I was at with Epiphany, man, like, having come over from having some years of experience already, educated already, like, God was God was using me and using that experience in my life to show me and teach me that, like, and one of the things that I've always heard was that if service is beneath you, then leadership is beyond you. Like, and I carry that over to my pastoring today. Like, if there's young dudes who want to, they want to do stuff and they want to do all that, young women want to do stuff. Hey, if serving is beneath you, leadership is beyond you.
Yeah.
It is. So, yeah, man, I got my start.
And you rock with Epiphany Camden for a good amount of time. So when I see, my little state property reference, when I see all y'all guys together, I'm like, oh
Yeah,
man, they got a whole squad up there, and
yeah,
then it felt like out of nowhere, boom, y'all are going to all these different places, right? And you were a part of the sending out of was it like 3 or 4? I think of it as like the 3 that came from. How many? How
So
many came from Camden?
it was 3 locations
Hmm.
before.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So Charlie and Trevor both went to Baltimore, obviously, and then Joe Marlon went over to Gloucester City, and then I
Right.
came down to Wilmington. So 4 pastors gone from one church
Hmm.
in a matter of months.
Yeah.
And so you said that it sort of almost out of nowhere, bro. It really was that. Like, it really was almost like out of nowhere, like, because part of my narrative, man, is that I didn't care about playing no church. Like, that was the furthest thing from my mind. Like, I didn't think about it not 1 second. And then I just made this random trip with Pastor Doug to Wilmington, Delaware. He had to go look at a dog real quick. So he's like, D, come with me. You can fight, like, in case somebody get on me, like, whatever, if we go down here. So I'm like, all right, cool, bet. So we get off the exit onto Folk Street, and God starts doing something in my heart that I can't even explain.
Hmm.
Like, the Lord just started pressing on me about this city. And so I'm like, Jesus, I'm good. I'm doing ministry in a city that I love. I'm doing ministry, like, at the time we were across the street from an apartment complex that we used to live in when I was like 2 years old.
Wow.
And so around the corner was my godmother's house. I used to run up and down those blocks all the time. And now I'm pastoring and leading in a church that's in that same neighborhood.
Hmm.
Like, Jesus, I'm good.
Yeah.
I don't need to.
And, and and for most guys, like that's it. It's like, yo, I'm back home. Some of the streets that I
Yeah,
tore up, now I get to bless people
yep,
on those same streets, right? It's like this is it,
absolutely.
and then guys like, nah, this ain't it.
Yeah. I'm like, nah, I'm good. So, Jesus, get at somebody else. Somebody else go to Wilmington. And so here's the craziest thing. Here's the craziest thing that happened. So along that process, like, Jesus just weighing on my heart about the city of Wilmington. I'm like reading random articles about Wilmington, angry, right? I'm like, I got the paper out, I'm shaking it, I'm like, man, I don't want to read this. So I'm reading this article that came out in 2014 on my birthday, September 19th. It was titled Murder Town, USA.
Hmm.
And so it was all about the city of Wilmington and the struggles that it was facing. But to save the long story, when I got to the end of that article, they interviewed this guy and they asked him, what's Wilmington like to you? And he said this. He said, Wilmington is just a South Camden. He was making a comparison to Camden, which is 35, 40 minutes north
Right.
of Wilmington, and saying that Wilmington was South Camden. Now, that seems like a fair comparison, right? But for me, those words leapt off the page
Hmm.
because the neighborhood, remember I told you earlier, there was a neighborhood where we lived at one point where it's all torn down. that neighborhood was South Camden.
Yeah.
And so I read those words, and literally the Lord spoke to me and said, "You're going home." And at that moment, I surrendered, and I was like, "Okay, I guess I better tell Pastor Joe."
Wow. No, I thought the way the story was gonna go is that you were gonna be like Michael Jordan. Like, I read those words. I took offense to that. It's like, I gotta do something about it. But no, that's an amazing moment because what you're saying is the comparison made you it really made you think of home, and then God affirmed that that is your new home. So
Yeah,
that's good. That's
he
good, man.
affirmed that. Definitely affirmed that,
So
and continued.
tell us about Wilmington, man, because honestly, there's a Wilmington, North Carolina. That's the only Wilmington I knew up until I
Mhm.
learned about your church, right? Really.
Yep.
Um, and but as I've gotten to just do more research on Wilmington, I realized that it's a city that um I probably could relate to a little bit because it's not a small town, but it's nowhere near the cities that surround it. Like it's what I would call like a mid-sized city, or in some people would say it's a small city.
Yeah.
I'll call it a mid-sized city because I hate when people say small cities. But
Yeah.
man, tell us about Wilmington.
So, man, it's one of those things where you said Wilmington, North Carolina. Like, I grew up in Camden. I thought there was only one Camden in the United States, but there are Camdens everywhere.
Right.
And so, Wilmington, though, it's interesting because it's the largest city in the first state in America. And so, it's really one of its nicknames is the corporate capital of America.
Hmm.
And so, you have this. Um, this sort of conflicting picture within the city itself, like most inner cities. But you got the corporate capital, businesses and banks incorporate here. And then on the inner rim of the city, you've got challenges and violence and crime and all that kind of stuff like that. But over the past couple of years, Wilmington has really shifted because, honestly, because of a lot of the political influence.
Hmm. Oh yeah,
Because
you're in you got the Bidens, right?
you got the Biden.
Hmm.
And so, I used to say, you probably never heard of Wilmington, but now everybody's heard about Wilmington because Joe Biden is from there.
Yeah.
And so, what we've actually tried to, you know, as we've been constantly assessing the city and thinking through ways to engage the city, man, we're seeing a real sort of resurgence of life in the city. We're seeing a real resurgence of like that sort of corporate professional sense about the city. Um, and it's still a place where you know everybody.
Hmm.
Like I just left downtown getting my hair cut, and the governor walked past. He goes to the dry cleaner on the corner.
Hmm.
He's been going to her for 30 years.
Wow.
And he walks past the barbershop, waves, speaks to everybody. He's the governor of Delaware. I could be in a coffee shop downtown and the mayor walks in by himself.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I know senators and congressmen and all that kind of stuff who have their phone number and can call them. Not because I'm big time, but because it's that kind of city.
Yeah.
So, but it's also a place that I didn't know this when I got here that has a heavy um, artist community.
Hmm.
And so, I mean, you see all this art behind me, like that's a result of the influence of the city.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many local artists here. They built an artist exchange that's like it's like 10 or so refurbished barns that are used as artist studios. And so it's just that kind of city, and it's a place. Their motto is actually, it used to be a place to be somebody.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, that used to be the motto of the city, and you really kind of get a sense that that's true.
Hmm.
True. Like if you can make it here.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because people usually go to these big cities like LA or Atlanta or New York to quote unquote
Right.
be somebody, but being somebody above anything is being known rather than being recognized, right? And if you're in a place like Wilmington, it sounds like you have that ability to be known, which is a far greater
Yeah.
thing. And we would lean on that when we talk about the gospel as well. But man, that's dope.
Absolutely.
I honestly would
Yeah.
have never thought of Wilmington like that. I promise you. I thought it was kind of lame. Nah, you know what? I remember like you remember when all those quarters came out back in the day, like and they started putting out all the state quarters. Like I remember the
Hmm.
Delaware quarter and thinking like, yo, what's up with Delaware? Like, what's going on there? And then it wasn't until recently, maybe the last 6 or 7 years, I'm like, oh no, like Delaware is right there with all these other cities in the Northeast, and you all share
Right.
some of the same culture, even though it's you have a particular culture, but you share a lot of the culture that the states and cities around y'all have, right? So it's
Yeah.
not like you
Absolutely.
go to Delaware and it's like nothing there. No, it's artistry there, it's music there, it's hip hop culture is there as well, and all of
History
those
is there.
things. Yeah,
Yeah. And that's true because like we're a northeastern city with all of the same history that Philly had, but we were the first state.
right.
And so a little bit of a history lesson because I like history. Like when Richard Allen broke from the church in Philly, Peter Spencer had done it 2 years before that here in Delaware.
Okay, let's go.
And so there was it's this mother African churches
Hmm.
that are formed that still run today. There's a Christian conference or a concert that happens every year called August Quarterly. It's the longest standing Black Christian concert in America.
Hmm.
Started here in Wilmington, Delaware. Peter Spencer did what he did before Richard Allen did it. Um, the first church in America is here in Wilmington, Delaware. Old
Wow.
Swedes Church
Wow.
is right here in Wilmington, Delaware. So we've got a ton of history. We've got a ton of character, a ton of beauty and artistry here. And I'm telling you, Delawareans have a lot of pride because we were the first.
Yeah. I see
So
you did something just there, just right there
yeah,
that makes me really appreciate you as a pastor and a leader. You said Delawareans have a history, right? And you're talking about that pride in history and culture, and you identify with that. You're not an outsider. You are now a part of that, right? Like you embody that. And when I see I'm just gonna be straightforward with you. If I were you and I was in my home city doing what I was doing, feeling like things were working, and then I get shipped off to, or not
yeah,
shipped off, but the Lord sends me right
yeah,
to a city that is close, but it's not home, right? And I have to kind of learn a whole new place. I would be a little bit like, God, why? God, why?
yeah,
And maybe you were like that too at one point. I don't know. But it seems like you are very confident in the city that you're in. And I'm going to be honest, it's easy to be confident in some of these big cities. It's not
yeah,
as
yeah.
easy to be confident in some of the cities that other people skip over or don't think about
For sure.
or any of that. So has that been a struggle at all, or is it kind of day one you hit the ground, you were like, yo, this is it?
Yeah, well, I was telling you the story a little bit. Like I I struggled with the voice of God sort of nudging me in this direction, but then something happened where the Lord. I tell people this all the time. I am in Wilmington, Delaware, for no other reason than the fact that Jesus called me here,
Yeah.
and the Lord has laid a 10-ton weight on my heart for the city of Wilmington. Like he gave me a supernatural love for this.
Mm,
Like I literally, like we have there's an expression here when you leave out of the city and you're coming back into it, you say I'm coming back in town. But we don't say we're going into the city. We say we're going in town.
yeah.
So every time I come back in town and I see the skyline of the city, my heart has the same feeling. Like there's a deep love that God has given me for this city. And so like, but early on wrestling with like moving my family to go to some other city that's just like far enough to be annoying
Yeah.
because it's still close to home.
Yeah.
Like, man, I could move to Wilmington and stay doing ministry in Camden because it's just 35, 40 minutes. Um, but but what Jesus wants to do here in the city is undeniable to me because I'm seeing glimpses of it every single day.
Yeah.
And so on days where I'm struggling and feeling like this ain't gonna work, I'm reminded that Jesus called me.
Mm.
Period.
And
And
that's
so
sometimes that's all we need. So and sometimes that's all we have, right? Sometimes that's all we have, and then later on we realize that's all we need. But it's difficult. It really is difficult. I'm glad you said that because, man, here on this podcast, I don't believe in sugarcoating, and I don't believe in like trying to make things um, seem like they're something they're not. So, like, man, what's been one of the biggest challenges in leading Epiphany Wilmington in your time, and then also like even like speak to the size, the location, the state of the church, and how all of
yeah,
those things have affected your time as lead planter and pastor of that church plant.
yeah. So that's an interesting question because we've been here 7 years now, and I was talking to my wife last night. I was pulling up some documents on my computer, and I'm like, babe, when did we do small groups in 2017? I don't remember that. And she's like, I guess we did if you got those notes. And so there's so many iterations of this church that like quantifying it or qualifying it into one experience is difficult because over the course of the years, man, like I've been angry, like I've been frustrated, I've been despondent at points.
Hmm.
Like, people I just did a sermon series on church hurt that I call I Hate Church.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that doesn't get talked about when we talk about church hurt is the hurt that's inflicted upon pastors. Like people who profess and proclaim their love for you, say they will never leave,
Hmm.
are the next minute out the door calling you a tyrant.
Wow.
And so learning how to navigate that, man, has been extremely difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of pain associated with that. And just, I'm a solo planter. And so, that's altogether a different beast.
Yeah.
It's like you get out there and you're figuring everything out. Literally, me and my wife at the dining room table, figuring all this stuff out, figuring
Mm-hmm.
out what to do, how to do it. But being in those places, man, and not feeling you have anybody you can lean on, and just feeling a deep sense of loneliness, man. There's just a burden in that only Jesus can help you carry,
Mm-hmm.
and until you learn how to allow Him to carry it for you, you're gonna be stressed out,
Yeah. Yeah.
which I was. So
Were there are there
It's
any
still in it.
are there any things that you would like if you could go back to so you said 7 years ago, my math is horrible. So what tell me what year
Yeah,
that was.
that was 2016.
If you could go back to 2016, is there something you would do different? Are there a list of things you would do different? Or is it just kind of like, man, hey,
Uh, you don't have time.
yeah,
Ultimately, though, I would invest more time, and it sounds strange because I spent a year developing a core group, but I would invest more time in developing leaders in the core group phase.
mm,
And a lot of the time we spent in core group was trying to build culture,
yeah,
but I would invest more time and more effort trying to get resources to have a stable leader alongside me.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, no, that was the main thing I had.
Yeah, again, man, there's so many similarities. There's so many places that we connect, and I think one of the biggest things, and I felt like maybe this is one of the reasons why you've shown so much love and care for me is that you see that I'm a solo planter as well, and you have seen the struggle of being a solo planter. But not only have you seen the struggle, like you're really close to some people who haven't had to be solo planters. So it's like you kind of sometimes you kind of like I don't know if envy is the word. Maybe envy is the word. Like you're a little
Yeah,
envious of that because you're like, dog, I got to do all of this stuff by myself. It's me and my wife. Like I'm going through leaders here and there. There are some leaders here beside me, but they're not really equipped to do like pastoral stuff or high level leadership stuff. And
yeah,
and yeah, man, you can become very embittered by that, just feeling isolated. Like, yo,
yeah,
it's just me. And I take all the arrows
yeah,
and I take all the stabs in the back, and I also have to be responsible for whether this thing works or not. And
yeah,
yeah, like I know both of us believe, God is he's gonna take care of us, he's gonna provide. But in the day to day, it's hard. In the day to day, it's hard, like acknowledging the fact that, like, God, this is God's church. It's like, yeah, but God ain't gonna log on to like pay the light bill this month. like I have to do that, or somebody who I deputize to do that has to
yeah.
do that. So you begin to feel like it's just and I'm preaching to the choir because you just said that.
No, I mean, preaching to the choir is helpful on a podcast because there's a lot of people who will be listening who need to hear that. And what's real about that is having to navigate the full weight of church planting on your own. Like you look around and you see, people who we didn't plant with the big bag. You shared an article earlier about the more money you get, the more people this dude shared. I'm like,
Hey, so let me just say this. Let this be known. I did that to poke the bear, actually. Like I did that to see
okay,
how people would respond to it. That's why I didn't put a caption above it. I just like, yo, I want y'all to read this and tell me what you
yeah,
think.
well, yeah. So like, there's talk about that. But we didn't plant with the big bag, but we didn't plant with, you know, um, we didn't even plant with the like big denominational backings and all that kind of stuff. We had some network support that was really good, that we were connected to. Um, but a lot of that, there wasn't a lot of fruit born from a lot of that stuff. It was relational, but it wasn't like, hey, here's some resources and some tools to equip you to do this. It was like, hey, Derek's a good guy, you know, he's going to kill it. Go forth. And I'm like, all right, well, we'll go forth, and we're grateful for the support that we got and all that stuff like that Jesus provided for us and through all the places we were able to get it. Um, but most days, it was just difficult. And early on, man, like my wife was working an hour and a half away because she still had her job in Jersey. She would leave the house at 6 in the morning. They get back till 6 o'clock at night. I would be literally be home by myself, trying to get out in the streets and meet people and all that kind of stuff like that. But there was this place where at one point I was just so lonely. Like my wife would come home and I'd be like, babe, I think some days I'm just gonna drive back up to Camden to just see people because like I'm lonely here. And then all of the roles that you play, right? Your accounts payable and receivable. You got like all this stuff that you are that that people don't even see, and if they see, they don't appreciate. And so, like, I've been known to say, stuff like this. Who do y'all think sweeps the church? Fairies?
Mm. Uh-oh. 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 Uh-oh.
You think fairies come and sprinkle magic dust in here and it's just clean? So I've been known to say that a few times to people as a way to sort of be like, hey, help me. But yeah, man, it's dealing with a lot of that stuff like on your own requires the grace of God, bro. It
Yeah.
requires the grace of God, man. And I'll say this, it requires a calling, bro.
Hey, man. Look, man, I feel like this is one of those things that I could go back and forth on forever. Uh,
Bro.
Half of the cats that aren't making it, it's because they truly weren't called to it. I'm not gonna say, like, listen, the Lord is gonna do whatever he like. There are some guys who they're gonna have to shut their doors for a lot of different reasons, right? And I can't judge those things. But what I will say
Right.
is we have to do a better job of figuring out who's actually called to the work, whether they whether they've gone through the seminary classes or not. You know what I'm saying? Like whether they have, done all of these, spoken at conferences or done whatever or written anything. No, we need to find the cats that are actually called to the work and who say, I ain't going nowhere. Like I'm doing this, right? Like this is I am sure of that.
Yeah. See, some cats have some people got catcalled to their city. So, it was a come over here. They whistled at them. Like they got catcalled to their city. But they weren't called by God to their city. They weren't called by God to their neighborhood. They got catcalled. They went.
Yeah.
It looked good. So they went. And so listen, I'm and that's not a pride thing. It's just a clarity thing. Like, because I wouldn't be doing this otherwise. I promise you, I wouldn't be doing this otherwise. Like, I got education and some other stuff. Like, I spent a lot of years doing mental health therapy. Like, I was making good money. Like, I had some experience doing some other stuff. I'm doing this because Jesus called me to this, and I love Jesus.
Mm,
And so, if that's not true, like, it bothers me when there are people, and I've seen them come and go in my city.
yeah.
Like that's the other part. You see them come and go. They come into the city. They got cat called here. It's attracted to them, and they don't have the ability to last because there's no core conviction of it.
Yeah. If you
And so
as you are, and I don't know if you're on this path yet, but I believe that God will give you this opportunity as you are, as you're thinking about guys who you're going to send out to plant. Is that an emphasis that you will put on their development that maybe a lot of other people haven't done? And I imagine the answer is yes. But so I'm going to add on another question to that. Um,
yeah,
if you were sending somebody out to plant today, like what would you want to make sure they had before they left?
yeah. So what I would make sure that they had before they left, and that's a great question. At the top of that list is humility. Like I've seen so many planters get burned and leaders get burned because they did not bear the humility of Christ. And so, like, you have to be humble. Like, you have to be humble. And so that's one of the primary things that I would for like you got to have something when you're going about this because here's why stuff's not going to work the way you think it is
Ever.
ever. It's just not going to work the way you think it's going to go. It's not going to go. The event that you're planning to serve the city is not going to go how you think it's going to go. Like that sermon that you've been writing for 40 hours this week, it's not going to go off how you think it's going to go off. Like nothing's going the way you think it is. And when you're not humble, that's going to hit you harder than it needs to. And so I'm going to make sure that, like, as much as I can, that guys are learning in humility. And for a lot of that, man, a lot of that stuff, like my pastor growing up, Pastor Doug, like uh, Pastor E, like all those guys, they understood like holding you up because especially when you're gifted, let's hold you up because if your gifting gets ahead of your character, you're messed up. There's nothing you can do. And so humility is at the top of that. Number two would be like clear calling. I don't think that everybody has to have the same conviction of like God called me to this city per
Right.
se. I think there's a level of I think there's some importance to that. Clarity might be important to that, but to have the same like full clarity of calling to a place, I don't know that that's necessarily needed, but calling to make disciples, calling to lead people in being disciple makers, like that's got to be key for any church planter. Like if you just want to go preach, well, bro, like there's this, like there's plenty of opportunities for you to do that.
Oh yeah.
Especially now, you can hit upload. So like, and there's a lot of people hitting uploads with bigger audiences than you and me, who
Hey.
ain't got nothing to say.
Hey. Hey.
So what I want to really I want to really instill is like make sure that this is something Pastor Doug would say, if you could do anything else, do that. He said it would have to be sin for you not to do this
Mm.
in order for you to. And so I knew there was a point that came for me that I knew that I was in sin if I did not figure out how to get my butt down in the ground.
Wow. Yeah, that's big. That's big.
Yeah,
I love it. I love it, man. I very much see you as one of those people, even if you're not sending people out, through Epiphany Wilmington, I feel like you'll be involved in some sort of way in sending guys out and developing them before they get sent out. And one thing I believe is you exhibit that humility and you exhibit that clarity and call. So they'll get a little bit of that just kind of being around you. And another part of it is that pastoral thing, man. Like you're extremely pastoral, and guys need to know that you are going out to plant a church. Like I think sometimes people think you're going to plant a movement or you're going to plant a culture, and movements and cultures are you see them, but the fact of the matter is we are called to be church planters. And if you're planting a church needs a pastor. It needs a person who's going to care for the sheep. And man, you exhibit that tremendously. Yo, I got a couple more questions for you before we wrap
yeah,
up. I'd love for you to tell me about this phase that you're in right now, as the church is 7 years old, as you are developing leaders and you are growing. Man, you're going to 2 services soon, and that's exciting. But I've also
yeah,
seen you do a lot more, especially in the last 3 years, with producing content and putting
yeah,
content out for the world to see. And
yeah,
again, a lot of the times, like you have peers and friends that are putting things out as well. But I feel like it's special that you are able to put content out for yourself so that your voice is heard in the midst of all of some
yeah.
good voices and some bad voices as well, man. So tell me about some of the content that you're putting out there right now.
Yeah, man. So one of the things that's a core conviction for me and for my church as we've experienced the growth that God has blessed us with, and as we've experienced sort of this transition back in from COVID and all that kind of stuff, but it was core for us from the very beginning, is that we love the Word. And so like I'm a Bible guy. Like I love the Word, and I believe in reading Scripture not for information but for transformation. And so I see a lot of times people are just like trying to gather information and trying to learn deep things. And for me, like I'm as I've always approached the Bible, I'm always like it's not that deep. Like there are some sure deep scriptural theological truths that are hard to understand. Even Peter said that about some of the stuff that Paul wrote. But the overall gist of it, man, is just not that deep. And I want my church and the people in my church to have a deep love for the Word of God. And so one of the things that God has just blessed me just sort of naturally to be able to do is I'm able to look at a passage and just see things in the passage. And so Charlie, our mutual friend, he always says to me, like, D, you just see the Bible so clear. Like, you just need to like write some stuff down and help some people, like help them see what you see and break it down. And so, one of the things that I have done is I put together an ebook that is uh, built with chapter summaries of the Bible. And so, I'm doing an overall one that's just based on the books of the Bible. The chapter summaries has been a 7-year process that is
Wow.
still in place,
Wow.
um, putting together. But this ebook that I'm doing is called "Get Your Bible." Like, and I just simply want people to be able to get their Bible.
Yeah.
Like, it's something that you can understand, something that you can glean from, and gain a deep sense of passion and conviction from if you love the word. And so I want people to help people get their Bibles. And so I'm gonna be putting that resource out at the end of September. I'm really excited about it. And I'll be having some stuff up on my on Instagram page about that and how people can connect with that. But I just want people to get their Bibles, man. Because I believe if we have a deep we'll go far, like in our faith. Like if we love the word, truly love the word, then we'll be able to do everything that Jesus has called us to do because it's built off of the clarity and conviction of the word of God. So
So
yeah.
yeah. Hey man, I love it. I love it, man. Yo, also, man, I see you, man. You've made moves on YouTube. You're tapped in, bro. Like eh, you know what's happening. You know what's happening usually before a lot of people do. You're following the right guys. You see the movements happening. Are there any movements that are going on right now that you're kind of like, yo, they're doing something this is going to be something almost like the epiphany thing where it's like early on you're like, I think this is gonna actually be something. Like, is there something out there right now that you've seen or experienced where you can say like, no, this is the Lord is really moving in this?
Yeah,
Yeah, I
they have to answer that question in the reverse, in that I see clearly what's not working anymore.
okay.
And so what's not working anymore is the way that I planted the church. Like that sort of like parachute in, uh, try to meet a bunch of people, try to raise some money from some white folks. Like that kind of that kind of approach to church planting is not that's not working anymore. What's working right now is this, and it's being spearheaded in the Pentecostal movement. Honestly,
Honestly, yeah,
there is
there
this
is this.
strong sense of like uh, of people who have a conviction to change a city and transform a city. I got a young cat in my city right now, man. That dude is on fire. Like he is on fire. That dude has a revival every other week. Like literally,
Literally,
like
yeah,
he has a revival. And when I see him, I'm like, man, like you got something else going on again. And he's like, Pastor, I'm just trying to go. We're trying to do it. And like he's got older people in his church, younger people in his church. He got all types of people following him, and he's doing an amazing work, man. And like the whole model of church planting, like the whole model of ministry, the way that I did it, man, like those things are fading
fading
away.
away. Yeah,
Um, what's on the move right now, man? Again, like there's this deeply like deeply enrooted movement that's like, we're going to love our city, we're going to take care of our city, and we're going to be the church for our city, and you can be a part of it. And that's what I love. Like, and I'm seeing that in multiple places around the country. I spent a lot of time with a lot of leaders, just through some of the networks that I'm connected to, and really trying to see other people and how they do that. Like, I've learned over the years that if if you think that your circle of Christianity is it, you're mistaken. There are so many branches of Christianity that are probably right in your city that you don't even know about.
Right.
You might think you know everybody in your city, but you don't. You don't know everything that's going on in your city. You don't have any idea. And even in a small city like Wilmington, mid-sized city like Wilmington, right? You don't even know what's going on there with everybody. And so,
Right.
like, having an intentionality to keep your ear to the ground and to, like, be the kind of person who um can show themselves friendly, right? I believe in that. That's a core conviction for me. Like, he who has friends must first show themselves friendly. And so, like, I do everything I can to, like, befriend people in the city. Like, I don't care what stream you're from. I don't, and I learned early on, like, I'm never going to feel threatened by anything that anybody else is doing in my city, because if they're doing it and there's life in it, then God is in it. And so, like, I think that that's something we got to be on the lookout for, is like these young charismatics, man, who are like just really convicted about Jesus and their city, and like, we need to love them.
Yeah. 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 What's interesting is in church planting, especially the charismatic movement, they are like miles ahead of everybody else right now. Like, I
Yeah,
mean, miles ahead when it comes to church planting movements, all that stuff. And but with that, um, it's usually in the past has been, and I'm gonna try to be brief, but I get uh, in the
yeah,
past has been like more white Pentecostal movements, or at least
yeah,
multiracial Pentecostal movements. But you're right,
yep,
man. There's some like black, what I call neo black church, which is
yeah,
like this second generation of black Pentecostalism that has kind of
yep,
moved into like a new age black Pentecostalism. So a neo black
yeah.
church, and they planting churches, dog. Like, I'm talking about, they sending people to your city. And you're like, yo, like, we ain't even reaching people in our city yet. And they're sending
Right,
people to your city. And you can
right,
argue theology back and forth. I don't care. Like, are people
right,
coming to know Jesus and living
right.
in the love of Jesus each and every day? If the answer is yes, man, maybe you need to go back to the drawing board and figure some stuff
We need to
out,
go back.
because I would agree. I think that's not working. All right, look, man, we on the downturn. We
Yeah,
always ask like some quick fire questions in this
do it,
round. It's not really a round,
do
but
it.
look, here are a few. Man, I have enjoyed some nights around the fire arguing hip hop with you. So, man, I need you to give me your favorite rapper of all time.
It's not even a question for me. I named my firstborn after him, Nasir Jones.
Nice. I love it. Hey, did you like the last album?
I did.
It was good.
I did like the last album.
It was good. It's
It
really
was good.
interesting what
Yeah,
Nas is doing like in the last 6 years. It's
yeah,
like, yo, you thought he was done. He's like, nah, like
yeah,
I got a lot more. So
yeah.
I dig
And
it.
he's working on something right now without Hit Boy, which makes me a little nervous. But
Yeah.
Hit Boy has kind of been his sauce right
Yeah. Yeah, that's real. All right. Man, you have this book coming out. I'm excited about the book. I can't wait to get a copy. Hopefully you send me an advanced copy. I can take a look at it. Um man, with you doing all these summaries, I want to know, what's your favorite book of the Bible?
That's great. That's a great question. My favorite book of the Bible is the Book of Luke.
Hmm.
Like, there's so many stories in the Book of Luke that are deeply compelling to me, Like I read Luke chapter 7 and I cry every single time. Like when Jesus says like that you gave a kiss when I walked in the door. You had no kiss for my cheek. You had no water for my feet. But this woman has ceased to wet my feet with her tears. She just not ceased to kiss my feet. Like that drink wrecks me every time because I'm like, man, Jesus, I know I talk a big talk, but like, is my devotion to you like that? You know, is my devotion to you in that same way? And it's so convicting to me all the time. Luke is so clear and helpful for me as I'm trying to explain and think through the story of Jesus, like which is super important to me. I love to engage with the Gospel of Luke.
I love it. I love it. Man, I text you about this already. We got
Yeah.
this direct flight from Daytona to Wilmington now. So,
Yes.
it's like $27. So I gotta figure out a
Yeah.
day that I could fly up and fly back like within a 2-3 day period. Man, and I joke about that, man, but man, our wives have gotten to know each other and kind of befriend each other and all that stuff too, recently. And we do want to come up there. When we come up there, man, I like to eat. So where we gonna eat at in Wilmington?
Well, listen, the first place that I'm gonna take you, Timothy's on the riverfront, so that you can get the crab fries. The crab fries.
Wait.
Yes,
Crab fries?
crab fries, man.
Okay.
And I'm not talking that chump sprinkle Old Bay sauce on them. I ain't talking about that. I'm talking about a mound of French fries, topped with cheese, with a remoulade sauce on top, and lump crab meat thrown on it, and then thrown into the oven so that the cheese will melt on top of
Hey.
that.
Hey, bro, we got to do about 2 miles before we hit.
And you gotta do 2 miles, bro. That's for real. So that's where I'm taking you. Timothy's on the riverfront, man. So you get them crab fries.
I love it. I love it. All right. Last question, and then I'll give you some time if you need some. Bro, who do you think needs to be on this podcast? We're developing this podcast. We put it out because we want to hear the real deal stories about church planners, church leaders, pastors. Who are some people who you think have to be on this podcast?
So I think who has to be on this podcast is a cat that I know. His name's Henry Tolbert. He has been a pastor in every sort of brand of church. And so he's a church planter by heart. Um, he pastored in a large mega church, a black church. He's done that. He pastored he revitalized a dying white church. Like he's pastored in so many different phases. And now what he's doing, he's working with a company called Simple Systems that he started, where he's helping churches, small churches under 100, to get their systems together so they can grow. And so he provided some support for us in the middle of the pandemic that shifted us in a tremendous way. And now he's got leaders and stuff. He's from Alabama, but he's got leaders up here who I'll meet with regularly now because he connected me to them, and they're trying to figure out how to do the kind of things that we've done to help them grow. And so he's a guy you got to have on the line.
I love it. I love it. Henry Tar. The reason why I kind of hesitate, I was looking him up while you were talking, man. Well, look, bro. Yeah, that man. Hey, I love to talk to him because we need some of that support and some help down here in Daytona. But two, man, I just love to kind of pick his brain, hear how he views things, and hear some of his experiences and all of that, man. Well, bro, man, I always appreciate talking to you. This is not. I'll let y'all know this is not what our regular conversations are like. We talk about a whole lot of we talk about a whole lot of personal stuff and our language is a little harsh sometimes, but try not to be sinful in that. But man, I do want to say salute in front of the world, man. I love you. I appreciate the man that you are and the brother that you've been to me, even in the short period that we've known each other, but also just the pastor you are to your people. Your people love you, man. I think that's evident just from the things I've seen, or at least you got a good social media person, one of the two. Uh, and then, man, I know your wife loves you too, man, and that's an amazing thing that I can say that a friend of mine has been able to impact so many people in that way. So, man, I just want to say I respect and love you a lot, bro. Yeah.
Yeah, bro. I appreciate that, man.
Any last
Appreciate
words,
that.
man? Anything you need the people to know, hear, or see, or whatever?
Man, listen, they need to tune in to this podcast, man, because what Byron is doing, not like anything anybody else is doing. He's bringing real stories to the table, not sugarcoating nothing, and making sure that people know what the real is as it relates to church leadership and church planting and ministry as a whole. And he's an amazing brother, man. I love you, bro. Like you said from day one, like it was all love, man. And honestly, like when I look at you, I see myself. You know what I'm saying? I'm a little bit older than you, but when I look at you, I see myself. And like, man, just to see like how God has helped you navigate through the years, man, of like figuring out what y'all going to do with your space and like actually getting into it. And your conviction for the neighborhood, bro, like that inspires me to keep going on, and how you lead your family and your wife and your children, man. Like, salute to you, bro. Like, for real.
I appreciate it, bro. God bless you, man. Well, look, man, we are at the end of our time together. We appreciate y'all tuning in to the episode with Pastor Bishop. And you charismatic, you Pentecostal too. So I know you a bishop. You know,
I'm a bishop out here.
Bishop Derrick Parks, man. If you want to hear more about what he's doing, y'all go follow him on social media. I'm sorry, bro, I don't know your handles, but I'm gonna put them in the description below. But they can also check out Epiphany Wilmington. Go check out Epiphany Wilmington. Now, if you want to hear a brother preaching, oh man, I forgot to tell you about preaching, because I feel like you have like your preaching has like taken up a couple of notches. You are already solid, but I've been listening to your recent stuff, and I'm like, oh, he in his bag now. He like, I ain't doing that teaching stuff. I'm preaching right now. Yeah, so if y'all want to check him out, man, y'all go to Epiphany Wilmington's website. We'll put that in the bio as well. It's just epiphany.wilmington.org, I believe. And yeah, man, thank y'all for tuning in to another episode of Tell the Story Doc on All of Life TV. And we just want to continue to tell y'all, continue to live all of your life in Jesus Christ. All right.